And they say what goes up must come down. In the case of house prices, well, it's pain, isn't it? Especially if you bought around the 2006 time when property prices were surging. I was one of them. Prices, of course, went up a lot more here than the rest of the UK during the boom, and it seems that they're coming down dramatically, big time. Two building societies, Halifax and Nationwide, say they're now down about 40% from the peak. Chartered surveyor Tom McClelland. Morning to you, Tom.
Good morning, Stephen.
I haven't spoken to you in a while. Nice to have you back on.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for inviting me.
And the Chartered Financial Planner, Jonathan Davies. Morning to you, Jonathan.
Hello, Stephen.
I haven't spoken to you for a while either. Nice to have you on, Jonathan. Well, Tom, what way is this going? Down and down even faster. Is it going to stop anytime soon, Tom?
Well, certainly, if you look at figures released by the CML and certainly figures from other lenders, the suggestion is that prices have stabilised. Now, once we've now hit the bottom, as you always know, the bottoms can be a bit bumpy, and the RIS believe that things will be a bit corrugated. What the big thing is, rather than concentrated purely on prices, is the big issue, the huge issue, particularly for employment, is the low level of activity. In other words, there's not as many. There's only about 30 to 40% of houses, number of houses selling compared to 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I'm just having a look here. Belfast, average price 191 grand, down 1% in the spring quarter. South East County down 7% in the quarter. The North East down 7%, 145 average price there. The West down 10%, average 114 grand. Those are big percentages. And Jonathan Davis, the question is, has it bottomed out now?
It certainly has not. The housing market goes in cycles of years and sometimes a couple of decades. It doesn't go in a cycle of a year or even months. So, even looking at quarterly figures doesn't actually help. And as Mr. McClellan quite rightly said, the issue isn't even prices. The issue is volume. It's transaction numbers. And when you have such tiny numbers in relation to the bubble period of 2004, 5, 6, and the early part of 2007, you just know that the prices are not rational. So £190,000 average price in Belfast is simply unsustainable, which means it's going to continue to fall down. You don't have demand out there. You can have 100 people banging on the estate agents' doors, but the banks aren't lending, so there's no real demand. And according to the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, in other words, estate agents, supply has been going through the roof. The people coming on the market since December has been going through the roof, but demand has not been rising accordingly. Economics 101, when supply is higher than demand, prices are going to fall. And then you add on the public sector cuts, the unemployment rises, the general economy. It's pretty obvious.
Tom?
Well, Jonathan does take a pretty...
Dr. Doom.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Certainly, yeah, the things that we are looking at, sometimes the airwaves are not the best way to have a rational economic discussion. But if you flip back, Stephen...
Why not, Mr. McClelland?
Because it's simply because of interruptions and following argument. But if I can get a couple of words in, if you flip back to the University of Ulster house price survey which showed that which was only published a few weeks ago, that showed in some places in Belfast house prices were going up. I take the point that small sample sizes give you bizarre volatility. But I think in general, if you look at affordability, if you look at ability to buy, certainly prices seem to have stabilised, because we're now getting to a stage, particularly in former housing executive houses, that have dropped maybe to 65, 75,000. And we're starting to see investors coming back into the market.
But Tom, was it not you were saying a year ago we'd weathered the storm and things were looking good, and now a year later we're the only part of the UK to have gone down.
Well,
Again.
The last survey shows that we've gone up. But however, the RIS is saying that prices will be flat. Because also on the horizon is this whole issue of sovereign debt, which Jonathan alluded to, which is, will the banks survive? What's going to happen to Greece? What's going to happen to Spain? I know it's not really. It seems a bit bizarre to be discussing that on the Nolan programme, but that does affect the supply of mortgage money.
Jonathan Taylor, I just wonder as the banks maybe, there's a lot of talk and a lot of back chat about the banks have had enough now, and a lot of them are going to be kicking in with repossessions that they've maybe been holding off on until this stage. And you start to wonder that if the banks are going to start recalling their loans, repossessing more properties, if they're about to do that, then that'll be a lot more houses put back on the market at cheaper prices, which would also drive the market down, right?
Absolutely. There's been a fantasy for the last couple of years in the lead up to the general election, which of course we had a couple of months ago, a fantasy that although there was the biggest global economic and financial collapse in history, and we see that in America, in most of Europe, around the world, somehow Britain is an island of prosperity. People have totally and utterly continued to mistake debt for prosperity. We had gargantuan levels of household debt, which we still have, until the big crash in 2008. Since then, we added to that with gargantuan levels of government debt. And alongside that, you just go up and down your high streets and look on the first floors. There will be reams and reams of to let for offices, for shops, and are out and about for warehouses and industrial premises. And the commercial side is just as bad as the residential side. So inevitably what's happened is with the slashing of interest rates from 5% to 0.5%, the banks have had a time where they could step back and consider the position, well, do you know what? The economy isn't getting any better. It's getting worse. According to The Guardian yesterday, there might be, my God, 1.3 million unemployed because of what's happening in the economy. An extra, should I say, 1.3 million unemployed. What's that going to do to the potential to service mortgages? What's it going to do to the general economy, which means that businesses can't thrive? So you're absolutely correct.
And in terms here in Northern Ireland, I see that there's a senior economist in the Belfast Telegraph, page 2 of the Belfast Telegraph this morning. It's the Ulster Bank economist Richard Ramsey, basically saying that there could be 15 to 20,000 public sector jobs lost here, and that's out of 220,000. 20,000 out of 200, that's 10%.
And the rest, Stephen. Look, 70% of the Northern Ireland economy is the public sector, and we know the public sector is now finally going to feel the pain. It hasn't felt the pain for the last couple of years.
Tom McLennan, when you look at house prices in 2000, actually the figures are staggering. Tom, you look at the average price of a house in Northern Ireland in 2007. Average price, £225,000.
Yeah.
Average price 3 years later, 2010, 128. From 225 to 128. That's astonishing.
If I can give you a personal example, there's a house I know was on the market at 365,000 and it's currently being marketed at 225.
It's incredible.
Which is a 40%. It is a 40%. You see, if you look at the broader UK picture, just did not get the tremendous house price bubble that we had, and we have largely corrected down by 40%. Yes, okay, there are big issues. We may lose 10% of public sector jobs, and that will make things. We see that rather than falling any very much further, prices will be bumpy, which the last two surveys show.
Okay.
University of Ulster say they're up. Nationwide and Halifax say they're down.
Okay.
I think that's all sample size.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jonathan. Nice to talk to you both today.